will be a little bit better. Okay, so Hamza, you were in the previous hangout, I think, towards the end. Uh, Hopefully, this will be a lot more um, concise because I'm not going to go through the whole like environment setup. I think I'm just going to go straight into essentially live coding. So here goes, kind of. Just let me set up real quick here. So so progress. First, let me just kind of talk about progress. Um, I think this is a reminder for you that don't really remember what we did um, or what we discussed really early on. Um, Basically, this project is EventImp. It's really just kind of it was basically someone had the idea that you would just be able to share important dates and events in your life with your friends. So very simple, and we decided to build it with Rails with a MongoDB kind of backend. Okay, nothing fancy, so to speak. Um, but I just realized that a lot of people were kind of new to programming in general, and I wasn't a Rails expert, so then it just kind of created a little bit more friction. And everybody had different environments, and I was trying to standardize everything. So anyway, if I were to, so basically it's an app that allows people to share their dates. So at a very high level, we want to be able to have users sign in. We want to be able to create the events and have them share it with each other, right?
Hey,
So,
might I add that that was my idea originally, by the way.
oh, that was your idea. Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
you haven't showed up because you were busy with other class. And whenever people ask me like, "Where did you come up with this idea?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was just discussed with the community. I didn't even know where to even." Okay, so it's all your fault.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so I just wanted to show what I've created so far. All right. Oh, actually, one more thing before that. So there's another guy, Depender, right, who was in the original group when we first decided to do this. So he created this Google Doc where we were talking about how maybe there was this one place where we can kind of just guide all the newbies, introduce Rails or introduce essentially MVC frameworks, the concepts at least to people from a Rails standpoint. And he created this, and I thought that it would be good just to kind of go over that real quick. So essentially, MVC is, whenever someone is on a browser, they go to a certain URL. That URL is basically a route, and from a web framework perspective, that route essentially goes to its corresponding controller. So, and that controller basically, you can put application logic in there. So that controller says, oh, okay, I have this view which contains like HTML, but there could also be logic in there in terms of the parameters that are sent into the route that the controller needs to kind of request some data from the database. So the controller essentially pulls all these things together and then spits it out back to the browser as a web page, right? So that's how dynamic web pages. And essentially, this process is, and this encapsulation of certain concerns, like the controller does one thing, the view does another thing, the model does another thing. They're all trying to, adhere to this principle to separate, separation of concern, so that your controller is essentially the logic, your view is just, your templating stuff, and then your model kind of describes the data in your database. So that's essentially what MVC is. So that's very quick. And I wanted to shout out to him. Unfortunately, he can't join us today. The other shout out that I want to make is I created this public Trello board. Okay.
Ooh, I love
Um,
Trello.
yeah. So this is basically, I just wanted to create somewhere where we can track the progress and have the community actually contribute, even when I'm not like there. I totally didn't describe this earlier, but essentially today we're going to go through getting started with creating some static pages, understanding Rails templates, understanding really quickly Sass, but not really Sass. It's really at CSS. We're going to do some test-driven development stuff, like very, very basic. And then really the crux is going to be here, the user model and user registration. All right, so hopefully, I tried to do this in an hour last video. Hopefully I can be able to do this all during this video with you guys here. So trying to redeem myself. And the tutorial that I'm going through is this one called Rails tutorial. And it's not really like I need every single thing in the tutorial, but it was helpful for me to understand the nuanced differences between this and something like that I'm more familiar with, like Django. So it's just to kind of understand what Ruby templating language is all about and how it, how it glues everything together. So we're gonna reference this. This is the main reference material that I've used. And is there anything else? Oh yeah, last thing is for you guys who don't know kind of this chapter 4 here, it describes kind of the syntax, syntactic sugar that Ruby has. So very similar, maybe a little bit different from C#, where you guys are familiar with, because it's a lot more dynamic, dynamically typed and not so statically typed. But it's a lot like JavaScript in the sense that, your string is just expressed in double quotation marks. This is how essentially string templates work. So it doesn't work in single quotes, but if you put it into double quotes and do a hashbang brace, this foo variable, it will return whatever the foo variable, represents. So if foo was, capture or hello, right? Hello. When you print it out, it'll say hello bar. But if you do single quotes, it's actually a quote out literally hashbang brace foo. So that's just something nice in terms of string templates. What else? The other thing is that instead of calling them associative arrays or dictionaries in other languages, Ruby calls those things hashes. And this is how you make hashes. So it's like a string with a fat arrow and then sort of whatever the value is. So this is a key, this is the value. But as of Ruby 1.9, they made it very similar to JavaScript, where you can just do a variable key name, colon, and then the value, right? So, I mean, look through these chapters. We're going to breeze through some sections of it pretty quickly. All right, so quickly, server, what have I done? And this is what we're going to basically try to recreate soonish. Oh, man. Whoops. Okay. So if I go to localhost 5555, this is what comes out. So essentially, it's a landing page. All right, it's called EventImp. There's a home. There's a help section. There's an about. These are all static. There's no the stuff thing I just put there as a test thing. If I go to sign up, this doesn't work because I screwed up. I realized that it actually should go here to sign up. And if I don't put anything, it'll have error reporting. If I do something like and I do something like blah, 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 I type in password, you'll note there, well, automatically the browser now does these things. Okay. But see, it has some validation. The password is too short, needs minimum 6 characters, right? So that's essentially what we're going to go through. And the technology is, it's a Rails app. We use Mongo on the back end. And hopefully after getting up to this point, the next couple of sessions will be creating the event section. And then maybe we'll get some fun front-end stuff. We'll style this thing, make it look pretty, make it actually usable. So, all right, so let's get started. All right, so the thing is, if you follow my advice, everything will be done on Vagrant. and it's spinning up a virtual, like a Ubuntu 14.04 LTS image, which is crusty. It'll be 64-bit. Most people will be on 64 bits. Well, you name it. Anyway, it'll configure everything for you if you just run that Vagrant file that is in my GitHub repo. I linked it in the CodeBuddies chat. And if you just run Vagrant up, by the time it's done, and there's a lot of stuff going on, as you can tell. Okay, by the time it's done, all you have to run is Vagrant SSH, and then you'll get to this. You'll get to something that looks like this. Okay. So everybody following me so far?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And it's essentially it's setting up PyIn, RVM. It's all the stuff that I documented in my blog posts that I thought was helpful. So all this stuff here is what it's doing automatically. So all this stuff is now automatic. It's just one command. You don't have to worry about anything. All right. So so that's that. Okay. Okay. So let's start from scratch. And I'm basically gonna try to do a live coding session at this point. So I appreciate you guys here, but if I get boring or if you guys need to go, I think I'm just gonna essentially go through all the steps from that tutorial, all the steps that is relevant. Talk through them as I go. So you guys can chime in whatever you guys want. But if you guys have to leave, that's fine too. I just hope I basically just want to make sure that I cover all these bases so that anybody else looking at the recording will be able to find it helpful. So don't feel like you're hurting my feelings or anything like that. All right. All right. So I essentially just created a directory that I want to start my new Rails app in with empty, except for Node version, Ruby version. Basically this, after you install a Ruby version or a Node version or a Python version, whatever, you can just put the version number in there. So if I look at, I'm using Ruby version 2.2.3, and I have a system version, and then I have this 2.2.2.3, which is essentially kind of an encapsulate. It's kind of like a virtual environment, but not really. It's essentially just another version of Ruby, and RDN is this tool that can essentially just make sure it's isolated away from your system Ruby. For me, I personally like it because if I need to update a Ruby version, or if I use, especially with Python, if I use Python 3 or Python 2, this handles it for me. So it's using 2.2.3, and Node, it's using 5.1.1. Okay, so what I need to run is bundle. Well, if you don't have it installed, you want to say bundle gem install bundle. Okay, and that's the package dependency manager for Ruby. Everybody uses it. It's like a standard. Then you run bundle init to initialize it, and all it does is just writes a gem file into it. And that gem file, you want to just uncomment it and save it. And then run bundle install. Okay, this is something where I don't want to just install it in some centralized bundle folder. I like to specify my own. You don't have to do this. It's just my preference. So I have this folder in my home folder called local packages, and I created one for virtual env, one for gem sets, and I already created one for the CodeQuarters things. But this one, I'm going to just put it into the same junkyard Rails cut, right? And then what it does is it installs the dependencies for this specific project in that directory that's specified. So because of this gem file, whatever I run, certain things within this directory, it'll know that it depends on whatever is specified in this gem file. So it's all about dependency management. So things don't conflict with each other, and bundler handles all that kind of stuff. So it takes a little bit to install. The other thing that I wanted to, as it's installing, the other thing I wanted to show you guys is that if you do clone the Git um, repository, I've created these tags that document essentially from starting the project from scratch and going through where I currently am. So the current tag is it mirrors exactly the current commit right now. So if I show EventImp, four, no, is it? Yeah, we got one. Sorry guys, we need a better clue. You can see that essentially it says, okay, user, I created a user create, read, and delete. I didn't create CRUD, full CRUD, because I didn't do update operations, and I did a custom route example. All right, if I just showed the first one, it just basically, this is the initial commit and configuration with Rails generate new app, generating the file structure, right? If I go to 1.1.1, it says I created some static pages, I created some templates, basic routes, and some static tests. All right, so basically, if you do git checkout, and you open this in whatever Sublime or whatever you use, you can essentially just go through the various changes, snapshots in terms of the progress I made to get to this point here. So let me just quickly get to all right, so after I do that initial bundle install, I can create a new Rails app by saying bundle exec Rails new Rails tutorial. Okay. Gosh. Damn it, I did the same thing again. But I want to specify, I don't want to specify no bundle or skip bundle. The reason I want to do this is because I want to specify the local directory for it. Crap, is it called active record? Yeah, and skip active record. All right, so same thing last time. I think I would have been. All right, so the reason I skip bundler is because we want to include a new gem in that bundler gem file, which is Mongoid, in order to support MongoDB. And then the other thing is to skip active record, because active record is essentially active record essentially is an ORM for an SQL database like PostgreSQL. Here, let me give you that link that you see here. Oh, you already got it. Oh, okay. All right. And okay, so backtrack. The reason I skip bundler is because we're gonna make some adjustments to the original bundler thing, and I wanted to install into a local path. The skip active record is because we're using a NoSQL database like Mongo, and active record is really for a SQL database. All right. Anyway, what it creates is this file, this folder called Rails tutorial, which is the name of the app that I created. If I go in there, it auto creates essentially this file structure, right? And I need to edit this, and instead of editing it, you can I'm just going to copy it from the original CodeQuarters. I want to mute yourself. All right, so so now if I look at the gem file, you see that I actually commented out CoffeeScript and whatever this Ruby Racer is. I added in Mongoid, which is for MongoDB. I added in this gem called decrypt, which is for password hashing. And I think everything else is pretty much the same. All right. This prime pride up stuff is really for my Emacs configuration. You can comment that out. You don't really need that, to be honest. So bundle install. And again, I do this. You guys don't have to do this. Okay, so it's going to go through, and it's going to install all these dependencies that's necessary. So you see that all these were already installed, so it's not doing that. It's only installing all the new stuff that's necessary. Like decrypt. And the reason why I still is installing this active record stuff is I think it's because I'm still installing Rails. So Rails needs that. So I'm not 100% sure if you actually need to do skip active record here, but I don't know. I'm doing it anyway. So I could be wrong. If you guys can, correct me, open to that. Okay, so now after that, I think I just need to run bundle exec Rails generate mongoid config. And this creates essentially a configuration file specific for mongoid, right? It creates config/mongoid.yaml. Okay, and there's a little bit of an error in there that I'm going to correct now that I ran into. Oh no, this actually made it correct. It's supposed to be that. Okay, never mind. All right, so we're good. We're good. So if I go down here, I can do bundle exec Rails server. And by the way, I said this before in the other video, but when you're running it on through Vagrant, you have to specify essentially the IP address as 0.0.0.0 for your host, and then port whatever the port you specified in the Vagrant file. So I think the Vagrant file that I gave you guys was 33333. You can change it to, I think, whatever you want above a certain number, because some are reserved. But by running this, you're able to actually. So if you didn't run the 0.0.0, what would happen is, you would be running it on the local host on the VM. You wouldn't be able to access it on your browser on your host machine. So because I'm running it this way, I can actually go localhost 55555 and say my Rails app is working. Okay, boom. All right. Great, so let's create some static pages. Okay, so the idea here is to get comfortable and understand how the routes are working, how the views are working, and not really complicate things with a database. So I'm just gonna use Emacs. Actually was a Vim user, or I wanted to be a Vim user because that's what all the cool kids did. But what ended up happening was that another friend of mine was using this, and there were just some aspects of it that I like better. It doesn't really matter. Um, call me crazy. Okay. So one thing that you want to do in order to create this is first create the controllers. The controllers to handle these static pages, right? So what you can run is bundle exec Rails, or if you're not using bundler, you can just do Rails generate, or the shorthand Rails G controller. Double check. Controller. Controller static pages home and help. So what this is doing is creating the controllers for static pages. This group called static pages, and it's going to automatically create a home view and a home controller and a help view and a help controller. So I'm just going to run that, and it should give me some. Yeah. So this is the output. It created, it adjusted in my config.routes, static pages help, static pages home. It created these views automatically. It created a test for my controller, and it created some CSS and JavaScript, which I think are empty. But so if I go to, actually now, where am I running? So if I go to now static pages.home, you see it has that. If I go to, oh, whoops, oh, there's nothing there. If I go to help, there's that. Okay, so that's what it essentially did. Okay. All right, so that's creating the initial routes, and I'm just going to skip through this. Okay, so one thing that this kind of walks us through is, okay, let's add some HTML to this stuff. So we go to apps, views, some static pages, and there it is. So that's the file. So it's home.html.erb. So ERB is embedded Ruby. It's kind of like it's something that Ruby can interpret and spit out HTML. But you're able to use like Ruby templates and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste essentially all the stuff that's here, so it'll work faster for my exam. Actually, you know what? Try to skip ahead because I don't need stuff. Okay. Let's just save this real quick. Okay, so now if I go to home, you'll see that the HTML has changed. Okay, great. All right, so that works. So one thing that Ruby definitely encourages you to do is just test-driven development. So basically, what I know of TDD is that whenever you're trying to create something new, you should always write a test to essentially a failing test, so that basically you then start developing the code so that it doesn't fail anymore. Right. So basically, here is a quick example of TDD that they're trying to show us. So basically, it's saying in the test directory, have controllers, static pages controller. Okay. Test, create a test and say should get about. So they're saying let's create an about page, and it should be a get request to an about the about route. and it's saying assert the response as a success, which is HTTP like a response 200, right? Okay, so if that you can run this test by saying bundle exec rake test. But I'm in the wrong row. But okay. And I'll run, and what you see is that there's an error. So okay, the test failed. Okay, so now let's go about making it work. And essentially, it's just saying, okay, there's no route. So let's go to where our routes are. Is in the root directory in the config folder. There's a file called routes.ruby. Okay, and you see here there's a lot of kind of configuration stuff that you can kind of read through. And essentially, it's just saying, all right, get, and it mentions the route that you would take to get there, right? Currently, it's at static pages. You're saying, okay, static pages at about. Okay, great. So then you create the route. Now we're going to create the test. We're going to try to test it again and see if it succeeds. And it says, okay, there's no action. Okay, so basically the route is working. So if I go to static pages / about, it's working, but it has nowhere to go because it has no controller, right, to tell it where to go. So, so you have to go to the root directory, go to application, go to controller, and then you want to go to static pages controller because this is the static pages application. And you see here there has been methods essentially defined. Is it methods? Yeah, defined for home and help. And that basically, if there's nothing in there, it just defaults to going to, it just returns the corresponding view. So okay, so I created an about. But obviously, what I just mentioned is there's no view. We've never created a view. So there's no template, there's no view, and this is exactly what it tells us in the error report. It says missing template static pages / about. Let's go ahead and create that. It'll be an app views, and okay. Okay, so now use static pages about. In about, there's nothing, but if I skip down here and just copy that. Now, if I run the test, everything should pass. And I think this is where I got to the last video cast. And you see here, boom, all this is there. Okay? All right. So that's static pages for you. Okay, so what about this other stuff? There's some titles. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to actually skip all this stuff, at least for the tests. So, okay. Okay. So I'm going to do this on the So essentially, because it's embedded Ruby, and I'm not sure what it is in the .NET world. But I know for the Python world, they have their own style of template language, which you can kind of run a little bit of logic here and there. Um, um, but here, let me just open this and delete all this stuff. Okay. Basically, what it's doing is it's saying, all right, provide the title home, and this title will yield this title. So right now it's a little bit contrived because you're just writing home here. But what you can do is you can take this little, you could take this section, right, this head section, and you can actually um, yank it out and throw it into what they call a layout partial, which is essentially just a big template, right? You can create this base template model, and you can provide it essentially these little subsections of your page that you know is going to be rendered time and time again. And depending on what you, or depending on the parameters and the variables that you provide and set in each kind of HTML file, these things will change. So here it's just providing the title with its value home. If I save this and I go home real quick, you see that that did not work. That is interesting. Sample app, this is what yes, it's could be how my browser is caching stuff. Maybe. You know what it is? It's being. Is it being yes, it's being overridden by this sucker. Oh, I know what they did. Um, basic part of the tutorial is to demonstrate what I was talking about. What they did was they deleted this file, so it didn't really exist, and then in order to make a print. All right. What they did was they renamed it. Okay. So yeah, so it doesn't basically that default application, that HTML.RB and layouts is essentially the framework. Let me just open it up again. All right, I'll show you what it essentially was doing and why it was screwing me up so bad. So essentially, let me just go to this. So basically, it was saying for every single page that renders, always render this for the top portion. And then render, and the body and closing tag. And whatever the view is that the controller is returning, fill it up in this place, in this section called yield. Okay. So if I went to, home, you notice that I don't have the opening tag. I don't specify a doc type. I don't start the HTML tag. But what I do start is just this div class center jumbotron, right? Oh shoot, that's my um, that's my old buffer. I meant to do static pages here. Okay. And okay, this is a bad example. I guess it's basically saying that I don't have to actually provide any of this stuff. I can just provide up to the point where it says H1 sample app. So I'm actually going to just do that now in order to show you where. If I delete this. Instead of saying this, I'm going to just say exactly what it was there before. It's yield title. And if I went to home, nothing's changed, you know. And I'm able to do that because basically it's rendering all this always And what it's yielding is essentially only that H1 for the sample lab. That's all it's doing. So what that does. All right. That's a template. Okay. So because you could do that, let's see, where does it get DC? I need to go through stuff. You'll just see it in the repository. Um, uh, okay. So basically what we can do is change how the default what this default thing is doing. So here there's this is what I need. Copy. Now render this. Got it. So what did I do here? Okay, so this is basically the same thing as what I did. Right, so here it's saying there's a thing that is calling called full title, and it's yielding the title that's being provided. Another thing, it's also rendering this thing called layouts shim, layouts header. It has the same yield thing that was working before, and it has its layouts footer. All right. So what is it really doing? All right. So you see here how the layout folder. If I went to app/view/layouts, you see how over here has application, but also header underscore footer underscore shim. So if I open up header, it's saying, oh, okay, so it has this little snippet. If I open up the footer, it has this footer. Okay. If I open up the shim, it has this thing, which is just basically an if for anything lower than 99 load this thing. So what that means is that if I put a home, uh, because I didn't. Oh, that's fine. Basically, I was just saying that the root page will just, okay, there we go. So then help. So instead of doing static pages, okay, we can just do this. Okay. And you notice that, like, all right, so there's a body of this, but everything else is being essentially rendered as the footer is being rendered, the header is being rendered, and the body of the stuff is being rendered. Okay, so all right. I think there's just one other thing just to get the styling up and running. Okay. So one thing that we're going to do now is just to add some style sheets. Right. So where to go? Where to go? App, assets, style sheets. Oh, they're going to make a custom style sheet. CSS, SCSS. Because this is a stats file, we can import um, files like packages. Right, and that should automatically give us some styles immediately. See? Right. And the reason it does this is because of this sprockets library. So, all right, I'm going to take a pause right now just to make sure that you guys are still following me and not falling asleep. But have you guys had experience with SAS and preprocessors?
I haven't, no.
No? Okay. So SAS is a superset of CSS. It was actually popularized by the Ruby community. Basically, it allows you to set variables. Here, I guess we can kind of walk through that. It allows you to set variables, import stuff, include stuff, nest stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it over from what I've already created in the code EventImp CodeQuarters thing, and we can kind of go through that. Okay. All right. So what SAS allows you to do is you not only can import libraries, you can declare mixins, so you don't have to keep on writing, vendor prefixes for certain things. You can write variables and for colors and things like that. You can also write functions and do like basic math. You're able to do this because essentially it's running through a preprocessor, which Ruby can interpret, this syntax. And what Ruby does is just generate or output a CSS file from that. And that's what enables you to essentially write it in this way. And you can also nest things. So instead of writing center, pixel line, center, space, H1, you can just write this one center thing and kind of nest additional tags within it. to kind of like just kind of make your structure a little bit more a little bit more readable and things like that. You can then refer back. This include box sizing is referring back to this initial mix-in called box sizing that you've created up here. So it's just a really nice, kind of um, uh, sugar on top of that makes CSS a lot more efficient and quicker to write. And it's keeping you dry because you're not repeating, essentially writing the same things, copying and pasting things over and over again. And it's all being handled with the preprocessor. And for Rails, with the Sprockets library, it allows you to write that, and as you're running the server, Sprockets will just automatically preprocess this for you, so you can immediately have that. All right, so now that I copied this over, this will look even better. Now you have the structure that was essentially created in our EventImp, whatever is in the GitHub repository. All right. So I think that's enough for controllers, templating, and layout and partials. All right, we're gonna now finally, I think, what time is it? Okay, 2 hours later, we're gonna actually go through and talk about creative users. Okay. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna be a very similar thing. Bundle exec rails generate model user. If it was an email, no name, email. I'll just double check. Oh. Then, and now I can look at. So when running that, it created a user class as a field of name that's a type string, and a field email that's a type string. So what's really cool about this, Mongo at least, is that I can create something like this and save it, and I don't have to run any migrations. That's the benefit of having a NoSQL database. It's that you don't have to run migrations. It just, it doesn't run on that kind of architecture, and it allows you just to kind of like create data structures really quickly. So I'm just going to talk through what I've done in the EventImp GitHub repository, just so that you can see the code that I wrote. So what I've done here is, you see the similar code that was generated previously, name and string. But what I've done is do some validations where the name has to be there, and the length has to be a maximum of 50. Okay, I've included a regular expression that will check that the email is valid. And then it's saying that the email needs to be there, the presence needs to be true, as in it can't be left blank. The length is a maximum of 255, which I think is a maximum that a input field can take anyway. The format needs to be valid with this regular expression, and it has to be unique. And it'll be unique, and um, it'll be case sensitive, uh, or it's case insensitive. So capital case David at email.com, I think will work. We'll throw whatever if lowercase David at email.com also kind of goes in. And this thing has secure password along with its active model secure password. It uses the decrypt library to essentially hash your password when you have this field password digest. So a good way to test this, I think, is bundle exec Rails console, which opens up a develop environment for Rails, and you're able to essentially test it out. So you can create something like user equals user new, and you can see that, okay, a new user was created with an ID of that automatically. It was created at, and every other field is blank, right? So you can do user.save, and it will, and it throws false because it should have caught that. And you can actually go, and you can go to Rails development, and you can say users td users.find, and there's nothing. Okay, so it did not save because of that. Because there's certain things that weren't included, so some validations that were maybe user.name user.email user.password. And user.save. Exit. User.find. Mongo. User.find. Maybe not saving. Okay. Maybe that's because it was a development console. But I then go to sign up. Let's fix that. There we go. Uh, go. And my account, and I am now able to see where I am. Mongo cut to query. All right. Okay. Hey, Taurus, were you able to follow all that?
Well, not the whole thing because I wasn't set up yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of trying to keep up and kind of watching what you're doing, and then I'm gonna after we're done, I'm gonna go ahead and install the stuff and try to do it myself.
Yeah. All right. So I'm kind of seeing why even the tutorial was set up and broken up in that way. It was because there's a lot of things in each section that probably needs to be talked about in detail, and it's probably impossible to uh, essentially do a single run through of of this of this type of kind of tutorial. I might have to just break it up into essentially 4 mini videos and talk through static pages, how the routes work, how the styling works, and then also just talk about user creation almost as a separate video. Because there's also just a lot of typing and a lot of just code that needs to be written that needs to be understood. So I think after 2 times of doing this, it's probably best that maybe I split it up into little smaller chunks. But hopefully throughout next week, I will be able to link you guys to the videos where you can kind of follow step by step how I essentially got to where I am. And hopefully by next weekend or the following weekend or maybe after the holidays, when we start up again, we'll be able to go through uh, how basically how to start creating events and start linking users and basically making everything kind of hook up together.
I gotcha. But I mean, I did get some understanding though. Like, I mean, I was able to understand like how the routing work and how the the templating engine.
Mm-hmm.
I did get that too. But the template, I have experience with some templating engine. Like I've used I think it was Django with Flask before.
Yeah, that double brackets.
Yeah, and then like ASP.NET has its own templating engine called Razor. And
oh yeah, nice.
It's very similar to Rails as well. So
yeah. Okay. Too ambitious. Probably needs 3 hours for a full kind of like tutorial, but I'll try to break it up into smaller chunks. But I really appreciate you supporting me. Hopefully this video was helpful. This probably was a little bit better than the last one because it got more to the point with more code. But ultimately, I think no one's gonna sit and watch this thing for 2 hours. So I mean, but I really do thank you for kind of sticking with me throughout the evening.
no, man, no problem. Sorry, I was late. It was a misunderstanding. I was thinking 8 o'clock Central Time, so
No
I'll
worries. No worries at all.
yeah,
You
man.
know, you lasted longer than the other guys, so definitely.
And I have like I was saying, there was like a group of us that started this new job and like actually did today at the job. Like we sat there all day long and just like we actually started messing with ASP.NET MVC, trying to do exactly kind of what you're doing. Like try to
Yeah,
see if we can make our own app from end to end. You know what I mean? To like
yeah,
try to, because like we have no idea how to do it. So I'm trying to get all 5 of the guys to join EventImp, even though it's it's Ruby, but I think we can still learn a lot, from making an app.
yeah. I mean, I've been rethinking how this should work because like a lot of this stuff, it comes quickly to me. So it's just a matter of like, oh, I see this one thing in this tutorial. Okay, I see how that relates, and I just like just start working on it. I see how everything's being glued together and how everything's related to each other.
Right.
Just because of that background, but I think it's really hard to just transfer that knowledge over succinctly or just quickly. It does take a lot of time. And I think that I need to rethink how this CodeQuarters thing will work, whether or not it's just, me working through it first and then, working backwards piecemeal, right? And, creating videos offline, uploading them, and then for these hangouts to essentially just discuss it and help people kind of recreate what I did. That's just, that's a lot more work, but I think that's probably the most effective.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think I
So yeah,
agree with that.
yeah. And so every hangout would really just be a review session to help people like figure things out and talk through things
Right.
instead of making them actually like implement things. And hopefully by, if I'm consistent and I push through and by the end of the year or something like that, then maybe people are a lot more comfortable once it got like kind of their their, their feet wet, to actually kind of live code during these sessions and get more advanced. But right now we're struggling just to basically get NDC up and running.
Right.
Yeah, no, but again, I appreciate the support. I really do. So thanks.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for all the time and the work you're putting into this.
Yeah,
Like you said, man, you already have this experience, and we don't. So it's more to our benefit to be here and listen in. So appreciate you.
yeah, yeah. And I think more practice, right? My second this go around, even though it took longer, I think it was a little bit more smooth than the first time I did it. Hopefully, third time's a charm.
Right.
All right. No, so have a good night.
All right, man. Good night. Thanks a lot.
Bye.